So this is interesting, at least a first for us. We're in traffic in this 2015 Rubicon with a Gen 5 LT 6.2 and an 8-speed. And we're in 8th gear right now as a 4-cylinder. We're in 4-cylinder mode. So cruising along about 1400 RPM at 45-ish in 8th. Now we're going up a grade. It kicked into 7th. We're going to flatten out here. Ironically, we're still a 4-cylinder. There you go, we're back in 8th gear. My observation on this 8-speed is that it seems peppier than the 6-speed. And the 6-speed seems peppier than the 4-speed. And I think that makes sense because the more gears you have, the more appropriate your power band is. Do I like the 8-speed better than the 6-speed? I don't know yet. There is definitely more shifting going on, and the way I drive, which is slow. Okay, we're in first now. We're at a stop. Second, third, and I'm just touching the throttle. Fourth, we're a V8. Fifth, sixth, seventh, 8th. Okay, we're in 8th. We're still a V8. Hold that throttle steady. Still a V8. Now we're not turning into a 4-cylinder. Not sure what the logic is. There you go. Now we're a 4-cylinder. So, interesting. Let's see what happens when I give it a little throttle. Drop 4 gears. Power's instant. So that's what I'm noticing so far. The 8-speed, having the extra gears, keeps you in that power band, and it feels very peppy. So I guess just letting you hear this shift and the sounds will mean something more than just going off-road. It's got a lot of power off the line. Shift, shift, shift. So here's what I'm noticing, a lot of shifts. What that does is it keeps you in that peak power band, but here's my impression. Large V8s with a lot of torque don't need a lot of shifts. So the 6L80, I think, works just fine. It just turned into a 4-cylinder. Very, very smooth in this one. Can barely feel it. Smaller engines, smaller displacement engines, and diesels like more gears. Keeps them in their peak RPM. So I'm thinking this 8-speed with a 5.3 is going to be pretty nice, because the Gen 4 5.3 had not a hard time with the heavier vehicles, but it just wasn't efficient. It wasn't as efficient as the larger displacement engines. So the Gen 5 5.3 with the continuous variable valve timing and this transmission might work out perfect in a JK. In fact, we've got one we're doing now that I'll be driving here soon. As far as the 6.2 with the 8-speed goes, I'm starting to think you have to gear it up, gear it tall to get the benefits from it. I'm noticing a lot of shifts, but I'm also conditioned to using the 6L80, and I love the 6L80. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but we're going in and out of 4-cylinder mode as we go up this little hill here. We're a 4-cylinder now. So the 6L80 feels just right to me. It feels like it has the right number of gears for a heavy JK and a large displacement V8. But you all know I complained about the smaller displacement LSs and the heavy JKs like the 4.8s and the 5.3s. This transmission may change that. Just like Chrysler's going to 8 and 9 speed and Chevy's going to 10 speeds, with the smaller displacement engines, the more gears you have, the more efficient that engine can be, because you're not counting on the engine's inherent torque to move the vehicle as much when you have diverse gearing. Same thing with the diesels. Diesels like to run in a particular RPM band, and the more gears you have, the longer you can keep it in that RPM band. So I think this transmission is going to work great in a 5.3. Now, it might work great in a 6.2. I'm just noticing more shifting, which can be annoying. Now, it's not like the 8-speed Chryslers that I drove where they were always shifting up and down. This is just basically coming off the line. You get wah, 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 wah. So once you're up to speed, it's fine. You give it throttle, it downshifts. But getting up to speed, you definitely notice that there's more shifts. So as far as that goes, I'd probably prefer the 6L80. Now, if this Jeep is geared taller, that might change things, because now it might act more like a 6L80 with a wider gear spacing. I will say one thing I do like is we're staying in 4-cylinder mode a lot with this gear set and this 6.2, and I think that's because the more optimal gearing, even in this heavy JK, along with the torque of the 3.1, I'm going to say, because it's half of a 6.2, allows it to stay in 4-cylinder mode. And we noticed in the Gen 4s that wasn't the case. In heavy JK's, AFM was pretty much useless. So I am already seeing benefits to this combination. In a 6.2, is it better than a 6L80? I'm not sure. I'm going to hit the trail here. I will say that when I get some miles on this and see what the fuel economy is, because for all I know it may increase the fuel economy 5 or 10%. GM claims about 3.5% mileage increase, which isn't a whole lot, but maybe in a heavier vehicle it'll help more. I don't know. It might even have less mileage, but anyway you look at it, we're going to figure it out, and then I'll have a better understanding of the transmission and a better judgment. But just driving it, I think if this Jeep had taller gears, it would be hard-pressed to tell the difference between this transmission and a 6L80. With the same gears, you can tell the difference because there's more shifting, more instant response, and there's just a feeling in this transmission that when you touch the throttle, it's not as laggy. It's a little more responsive, I would say. Not something that I need for myself, because I grew up with 3 speeds, then 4 speeds, and now these 8 speeds are just, way more than I need for the way I drive. But I think what it really comes down to is the torque and displacement of the engine versus the number of gears and the gearing of the axles. So the smaller displacement engines, like the 5.3s, I think are going to benefit from this 8-speed and allow it to be running a heavy JK efficiently. The 6.2s are not going to benefit as much, I don't think. If you were in a Corvette that went 200 miles an hour, 8 gears is great. But in a JK that might go 100, I don't think 8 gears is required with a 6.2 engine. Now, it could be wrong. We might notice some economy gains with this 8-speed, but I don't think so. I think we're going to see similar results to the 6-speed and the 6.2, and we're going to see better results with a 5.3. I'm going to go off-road right now, and we're going to see how it handles off-road, and I'll give you my input on that. I will say in 4 low, 8 gears might be too much on the trail. It may just lead to better crawling performance, but running trails, I think there's going to be a lot of shifting going on. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions. What I can say is this Gen 5 engine does run great. I love the way the engine sounds. It sounds almost like a mini diesel. When you fire it up in the morning, it cranks like a diesel because that high compression. You got to build fuel pressure up, and then it fires off like a diesel. So it's a gas motor running similar to a diesel. Of course, it has ignition, but basically what they've done is they're moving towards the diesel in cylinder pressures to get the higher efficiency. So it's going to act more like a diesel. Now, right now, I am cruising as a 4-cylinder through Red Rock here, and this is a pretty heavy JK. I think it's only got 37s on it, but still, I'm a 3.1 liter driving through here with an 8-speed transmission, and like we mentioned, the smaller displacement engines like more gears. So the 3.1 liter AFM 6.2 with the 8-speed seems to be a pretty good combination. And if that does deliver more economy, then great. Most of you aren't going to drive like this. Most of you are going to drive more aggressively, which means I think that advantage is going to be outweighed. But we'll see. I can feel the converter clutch coming in and out. It's not on and off. It's modulated. I can feel the 4-cylinder mode coming in and out. A lot of stuff going on with this engine. I can feel the camshaft phasing in and out. And we're staying in 8th gear. And we're only going 50 miles an hour. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this engine. It's not like an LS3 where you have no VVT, no AFM, no direct injection. We were running a 6-speed transmission. It's a much simpler engine. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this engine. And does that make it more efficient? I guess we're going to find out.